Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Dr. Sara Khan, and today our topic of discussion is epithelial tissue. In the end of the lecture, you will be able to know that what is an epithelial tissue, what are the different types of epithelia, and how to name these different types of epithelia, and what are the functions and locations of different epithelia. So, first of all, you should know that what is the meaning of the term tissue. Cells work together in functionally related groups called tissues. There are four basic types of tissues. Number one is the epithelial tissue, which is used for the lining and covering of different body parts. Number two is the connective tissue, which is used for the support. Muscle tissue and the nervous tissue. These four are the basic types of tissues. Now, what is the epithelial tissue? It is composed of closely aggregated cells with strong adhesions to one another and attached to a very thin layer of extracellular matrix. Cells are closely opposed to each other. The epithelial tissue covers a body surface or lines a body cavity and forms most of the glands. Now, what are the functions of epithelium? It covers and protects the body, for example, the epidermis of the skin. It is used for absorption, for example, in the intestine, used for secretion, parenchymal cells of the glands, and filtration. Now, what are the special characteristics of epithelial cells? Cellularity. Cells are in close contact with each other with little or no intercellular space between them. Adhesion is through specialized cell junctions. Polarity. Polarity means each cell has different poles. They have an apical surface, the lateral surfaces, and the basal domains, and are supported by underlying connective tissue. The epithelium is basically avascular, and they get their nutrition from the blood vessels present in the underlying connective tissue. And the epithelial cells have the regenerative capacity through mitosis. Now, all the features are shown in this diagram. You can appreciate this diagram that in this case, these are the different cells. These are the lateral poles. These ones are lateral poles, where you can see the cell junctions are present. For example, on the lateral domains, different cell junctions are present: tight junctions, adhering junctions, and gap junctions through which the cells are closely opposed to each other. And this is the apical surface. On the apical surface, you can see the microvilli are present and cilia are present. So these are the apical cell surface modifications. And when you see this is the basal surface, where the basement membrane, this is the basal region where the basement membrane is present. So this one is the apical pole, this is the lateral pole, and this is the basal region, and this is the underlying connective tissue. As I have told you earlier that the epithelium itself is avascular. The epithelial cells get their nutrition from these underlying vessels which are present in the underlying connective tissue. Okay, now how do you name the epithelium? The naming of the epithelium includes both the layers first and the shape of the cells second. It means it is a combination of two words. The first word shows the layers of the cells, and the second word shows the shapes of the cells. Okay, first name of the tissue indicates number of layers. For example, it can be simple or it can be stratified. When it means simple means a single layer, one layer of cells, and stratified means more than one layer of cells. And last name, the second name, describes the shape of the cell. Okay, so the cells can be cuboidal, they can be schemas, or they can be columnar. So if I name this, they can be cuboidal, schemas, or columnar. For example, if I say that the epithelium is simple cuboidal, it means simple means single, cuboidal means cubes. shaped cells. So it means this is the epithelium which has a single layer of cuboidal cells. Simple schemas means a single layer of schemas shaped cells. Simple columnar means a single layer of columnar cells. Now, the name may also include any accessory structure. For example, there can be goblet cells, there can be cilia or microvilli or the keratin. For example, simple columnar epithelium with goblet cells, simple columnar ciliated epithelium, simple columnar epithelium with goblet cells, simple columnar ciliated epithelium, and simple schemas keratinized epithelium. Now there are special epithelial tissues which don't follow any naming conversion. For example, the pseudo stratified epithelium. Pseudo means false and stratified means layers. So this is the epithelium which gives us an appearance of falsely stratification, and the other is transitional epithelium. Now, what do you mean by simple schemas epithelium? As I have already told you that simple schemas epithelium means simple means single layer of schemas cells. So this here you can see these are the schemas cells. When you see their surface view, you can see they are flattened and irregular cells. In this diagram, you can see the surface view they have here their surface view they have irregular and flat cells, and when we see the perpendicular section, this one, we can also see these are the spindle shaped flattened cells which have a flattened nucleus. This is the flattened nucleus. This epithelium is also known as the pavement epithelium. Okay, so this type of epithelium is present in the alveoli, in the blood vessels. In the blood vessels, this epithelium, the simple schemas epithelium of the blood vessels, is known as endothelium. So whenever you read the word endothelium, it means it's a simple schemas epithelium. Or the mesothelium. Mesothelium is also a simple schemas epithelium which lines the different body cavities. For example, the peritoneal cavity, the pericardial cavity, or the pleural cavity. All the lining epithelium of these cavities is simple schemas epithelium. And the endocardium. Endocardium is the covering of the heart. For example, the atria and the ventricles are also lined by the simple schemas epithelium. And what is the function of the simple schemas epithelium? Its function is mainly, for example, in the alveoli, simple schemas epithelium is used for the exchange of gases, gaseous exchange. And next is simple cuboidal epithelium. Simple cuboidal epithelium is the single layer of cuboidal cells. The cuboidal cells, as you can see in this diagram, the cuboidal cells have same height and width. This one is the cube. Okay, and when these cuboidal cells are closely aggregated to each other, they form the simple cuboidal epithelium. And the simple cuboidal epithelium is present in the ducts of the salivary glands. For example, the intercalated ducts of the parotid glands, or they are also present in the ducts of the pancreas. They are present in the ovary, thyroid follicles, and distal convoluted tubules of the kidney. And then comes the simple columnar epithelium. As the name indicates, that simple means it is a single layer of columnar cells. Columnar cells, you all know that they have a height greater than the width of the cells. So they are the tall columnar cells. Simple columnar epithelium is basically present in the locations where there is a need for absorption. Okay, for example, they are present in the digestive tract, mainly when you see the stomach, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, rectum, colon. They all are lined by the simple columnar epithelium. Okay, again they have goblet cells and microvilli. I will tell you about that in the upcoming lecture. And then the fallopian tube. In the fallopian tube, the simple columnar epithelium also has cilia. So the epithelium of the fallopian tube is simple columnar ciliated and non-ciliated. Okay. Then comes the pseudo stratified columnar epithelium. As I have already told you that pseudo means false, stratified means layer. So this is the epithelium which gives us a feeling of false stratification. Here tall irregular cells all are attached to the basement membrane, but their nuclei are at different levels and not all cells extend to the free surface, giving a stratified appearance. Okay beta, I will tell you in this diagram. Okay, in the pseudo stratified epithelium, two types of cells are present. Here they are present. These ones are the tall columnar cells. These tall columnar cells, these tall columnar cells. Okay, tall columnar cells and the basal cells, these basal cells. Okay, the tall columnar cells are wider in the apical part and the basal cells are wider in the basal part. So the nucleus of the cell is present in the widest portion. Here you can see this is the tall columnar cell which is extending from the base towards the apex, and its nucleus is present in the widest part, in the upper part. But when you see this basal cell, it is not reaching towards the apex of the cell, and the nucleus is present in the basal widest part. So here in this diagram you can appreciate that the tall columnar cells and the basal cells both lie on the same basement membrane. Okay, but you can see that their nuclei are present at different levels. These nuclei are present at different levels. This nucleus, this nucleus, this nucleus, this nucleus, they are present at different levels. So when we see this epithelium, it gives a false appearance of being stratified because of their nuclei present at different levels. And mostly on the surface of the pseudo stratified epithelium, cilia are present. These are the cilia. Okay, and mostly the pseudo stratified columnar ciliated epithelium is present in our respiratory passages, nose, nasopharynx, trachea, in the lungs. All this epithelium is pseudo stratified columnar ciliated epithelium. Okay, next is stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar epithelium. Simple, we have covered the simple epithelium and the pseudo stratified epithelium. Now stratified cuboidal and stratified columnar epithelium, both are relatively rare. Stratified cuboidal epithelium occurs in the excretory ducts of the salivary and sweat glands, and stratified columnar epithelium is seen in the conjunctival lining of the eyelids, where it is both protective and mucus secreting. Basically, in the stratified cuboidal epithelium, the basal cells and the apical cells both are cuboidal in shape. Okay, and in the stratified columnar epithelium, there are two layers. The basal layer is of cuboidal cells and the apical layer is of columnar cells. Now this is a very important variety which is known as stratified Schemas epithelium. Okay, usually have the stratified Schemas epithelium usually have protective functions: protection against easy invasion of underlying connective tissue by microorganisms and protection against water loss. It consists of a variable number of cell layers that exhibit maturation from cuboidal basal layer adherent to the underlying basement membrane to the flattened surface layer. This epithelium is multi-layered epithelium. It has a basal layer. This is the basal layer of cuboidal cells. Above the cuboidal cells, there is the intermediate layer which has multiple layers of large polygonal cells, and above the intermediate layer there is present a superficial layer which consists of flattened Schemas cells. Always remember that in the case of the stratified epithelium, okay, we name the epithelium on the basis of the shape of the cells present on the surface. For example, here in this case the superficial layer consists of the flattened Schemas cells, so this is known as stratified Schemas epithelium. Okay, now the basal cells include continuously dividing stem cells. Their offspring migrate towards the surface where they are ultimately shed. It means that the surface cells are shed again and again, and they are replaced by the progenitor cells from the basal surface. Now, the stratified Schemas epithelium is of two types: stratified Schemas keratinized epithelium and stratified Schemas non-keratinized epithelium. In the case of the stratified Schemas keratinized epithelium, the epithelial surface of it is present in the epithelial surface of the skin. For example, the epidermis. Whole of the epidermis is stratified Schemas keratinized epithelium. It withstands the constant abrasion and desiccation. The surface epithelial cells accumulate cross-linked cytokeratin intermediate filaments. We are talking about the surface cells. In the case of stratified Schemas keratinized epithelium, the surface cells, the nuclei of the surface cells become progressively condensed pycnotic. It means the nuclei die and eventually disappear along with other organelles and form superficial layers, flattened schemes that impede water loss. I can simplify this thing that in the case of stratified Schemas keratinized epithelium, the simple Schemas cells which are present on the superficial surface, their nuclei and organelles disappear and they accumulate cytokeratin intermediate filaments and form keratinized cells. Keratinized cells are sloughed off and replaced by new cells from more basal layers. Now, the stratified Schemas non-keratinized epithelium. It is well adapted to withstand abrasion since loss of surface cells does not compromise the underlying tissue. It is poorly adapted to withstand desiccation. Here, cells accumulate much less keratin and retain their nuclei, but still provide protection against microorganisms. This type of epithelium lines the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, anal canal, uterine cervix, and vagina. Sites which are subjected to mechanical abrasions but which are kept moist by glandular secretions. Okay, now you can see clearly in this diagram. This is stratified Schemas epithelium lining of the esophagus. This is stratified Schemas non-keratinized epithelium. This one is non-keratinized epithelium present in the esophagus, and this is the stratified Schemas keratinized epithelium in the epidermis of the skin. This is here you can appreciate this layer. Here you can appreciate this is all keratin. The surface cells lose their nuclei and organelles and their cytoplasm is filled with cytokeratin intermediate filaments. While in this case you can see that the surface cells retain their nuclei. And here no keratin or small amount of keratin is present. So this is the difference between stratified Schemas keratinized and non-keratinized epithelium. Now in this again in this diagram you can appreciate, I can revise again that this is the basement membrane. These are the basal cells. Above the basal cells, there are present multiple layers. These are all the polygonal or polyhedral cells. For example, these are the basal cells, basal cells are cuboidal cells. Then these are the multiple layers of the polygonal cells, and the most superficial layer is the Schemas cells. And the basal cells, this one, the mitosis occurs in the basal cells, and whenever the cells from the surface layers are sloughs off, the mitosis occurs in the basal cells and they replace the surface cells. Okay, this is the underlying connective tissue. This one is the underlying connective tissue. Here you can appreciate that the capillaries, the fibrocytes and arterioles, all other things are present in the connective tissue, and through these capillaries and these arterioles, they supply nutrition to the epithelium. This is again a diagram of the non-keratinized and keratinized epithelium. This is the keratinized epithelium, you can appreciate, and this is non-keratinized epithelium. You can appreciate the height. Here above a lot of keratin is present, here there is no keratin is present. Other is transitional epithelium. I will cover the transitional epithelium in the next lecture. And these are the different types of epithelium. This is the classification and some typical locations and major functions. As I have already told you that simple squamous epithelium is used for exchange barrier in central nervous system, exchange and lubrication barrier, and simple cuboidal epithelium is used for absorption. It is used as a barrier and absorption and secretion. Simple columnar epithelium is also used for absorption and secretion, and pseudo stratified epithelium is used for secretion absorption, and these are their locations which I have already told you. Stratified squamous epithelium, barrier and protection. Wherever in the body barrier and protection is needed, then there will be stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified cuboidal epithelium, again it's a barrier. Stratified columnar and transitional epithelium is also known as urothelium. Okay, this is all about today's lecture. In the next lecture we will inshallah cover the transitional epithelium and the basement membrane. Thank you.